I'd like to welcome Casey Bruce here with me today in Poseidon Equines in the saddle with Linda. So welcome, Casey, and thank you for joining us.
Very happy to be on board, Linda. It's great to be one of your sponsored riders and teams, so it's great to be here with you.
Fantastic. So now, Casey, as many people would know, you are a very accomplished equestrian across so many disciplines, so showing and racing, and there's probably more that I don't even know about. So what's, in terms of your experience with horses, just give us we're going to talk about a very famous horse that you're obviously involved with at the moment, but just share with us a little bit about your own experience across working with horses.
So I didn't even know really horses existed until I was 7 years old, where Mum and Dad bought a property out at Woodend in Victoria. Yep. And then, of course, when you're on a property, what do? You want a horse.
Yes.
And my first horse was less than perfect. He was the worst horse any beginner could ever ask for. I was dragged like you wouldn't believe, bucked off, hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, just the world's most horrible horse. But thanks to my mum, she kept putting me back on board and said, every fall, get back on. And that gave me more and more confidence. So then I went through the pony club side of things into the dressage side of things, then, of course, across to showing. And then from showing, I went into racing. And once I became a jockey, I just found that the two disciplines weren't really lining and gelling together. Like for the race riding would affect my show riding. I wouldn't be sitting up that perfect. And it was just becoming too much. So for me, I had a race ride one day and Mum took my horse across to, I think it was Barristock, and I was doing the adult riding competition at Barristock. And I rode at Werribee Park at the race course. So I rode at Werribee races. I ran last at Werribee races. And then Mum had the horse across at Werribee Park Equestrian Centre, dived back there, jumped on my show horse and got champion level 1 rider at Barristock for the HRCAV. So when I did that, after getting off a racehorse and then onto a show horse, when I accomplished that, I said to Mum, well, I don't need to do that again. And hence then I focused on race riding until virtually now, until I've got back into the showing world, nearly 20 years later.
Gosh, that's amazing. So what I love is today's conversation. The whole purpose of these interviews is to get people to share their journey, particularly around this concept of gut health, that even though, we think it's a new thing, it's not. Horses have bacteria forever, but our awareness is new. And so today when we're having these chats, you can share your own experience with horses, but also share your experiences with your very famous boy, who I guess most people would know as Chautauqua, but he's affectionately known as Sharky. And many people would recognise this beautiful boy because of his strong will, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. But, he showed his determination when he effectively didn't want to leave the barrier, which I guess ended his racing career. And what's been amazing, we'll talk more about our journey working with you, but, he's such a special boy, isn't he? So let's chat about Sharky and how did you get him, and what happened when you very first met him?
So it all started when obviously he began to get the fame of being the bad boy of racing, so to speak. This horse that was world champion, and literally he was named world champion in 2016. So he's no slouch of a racehorse. Let's just be honest there. Yeah. And then all of a sudden this racehorse decided that he wasn't going to race anymore. And the racing people and his owners threw pretty much anything and everything they could at him. No stone unturned.
They really love him, and they're still very invested in his career.
Oh, they're still hugely invested. They still support him. They're still on the phone with me all the time asking how he is. So his owners really wanted the best for him. But let's face it, he was a Ferrari sitting in the garage and the key would start, but it just wouldn't leave the garage.
That's a good analogy.
So at the end of the day with him, once he started to not leave the barriers, myself and who I call Dad number 2, so Rob Gaylard, he and I work very closely together. He's a mentor of mine, media coach, and someone that, I love and adore as if he was my own father. And we got talking at Melbourne Show when he was just about to have his last jump out, the very last chance he had, which was at Moonee Valley. Anyway, we both watched that night and he didn't jump. So instantly when Rob and I got into Melbourne Show the next day, because Melbourne Show was on at the time,
Okay.
we put together a plan from the broadcast box about getting in touch with Rupert Lee, what our intentions would be, what we planned to do with him and how we wanted to do it. And that's virtually how it came across. We rang Rupert. Rob left it pretty much up to me. Like, Rob got the ball rolling. He got the ball rolling. He had the contact. He got the ball rolling, and I finished the ball through sheer harassment of Rupert and the owners group. I went in and had meetings with Rupert in his offices because Rupert didn't know what showing was.
Yeah.
He had a line from here to New South Wales that were wanting to take the horse. And this little known jockey off the track obviously just put together the best plan, and Rupert obviously saw something in me that he wanted for his horse. You know, he obviously knew that I wasn't about the glory side of things, that I would genuinely be about his horse. And that's pretty much how I secured him, because at the end of the day, I wanted to keep him as he is, the people's horse. And you would know, Linda, I'm very generous with my time. Like, I allow anyone that touches base with me, you know, I make the time, I drive out to the property and allow people that I don't even know to come out and meet him. So, and that's why I got him, because that's the personality that I am.
Yeah. He's a very special horse. I remember meeting him for the first time and just kind of feeling like, wow. I think I'd met Sub-Zero. It might have been a couple of weeks before. It was around that time. Then I'm meeting Sharky, and I walked up and he put his head in my lap, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is Chautauqua. And gorgeous Rob, who, you know, we know has sadly passed away, was so proud of this boy and so in love with this horse. And I think that, you know, I have a special passion and interest in off the tracks as well. And they have their own journey, and every horse is different. So for Sharky to come to you and be allowed to transition in his own way has been amazing, because I'd imagine a horse, like, he's obviously a really special guy, and he may not have coped in an environment which was lots more horses and he was just a number. I'm not saying other, you know, stables are like that, but for him, he had to have that really one-on-one. Let's really sort of, you know, manage him through this process. So what was it like the first time you met him?
Well, the first time I met him, he arrived on Rob's property. So Rob got to meet him first. And of course, I met Rob down there the next day. So I went a whole day ringing Rob and going, oh my God, Dad, what does he look like? You know, and all the rest of it. And I can remember when I met him for the first time, I went, wow. I went, wow, from the sense that he was bigger than I ever thought he was. He's only, well, I've had him officially measured. He's only 16 hands, but he just, I know, right?
Wow. Yes.
He's just a unit. And that's probably why he was the champion that he was. He's so strong, and he just has this presence about him.
Doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah.
And he just draws you in. It's like this little rope where he's pulling you in. Like, he owns and oozes presence. And that's what he's like. But to be honest with you, Linda, I've had the horse now 16 months, and we first had him at Rob's, and we had him at Rob's for just on 6 months. And as you say, it's been a transition period. He lost a lot of weight when we first got him there, because we changed his diet. And, you know, when it comes to gut health, taking racehorses off the track and then trying to get them on a diet, he faded away on us. And, you know, at points in time, I saw ribs, and Rob and I were just going, oh my God, you know, like, we've got ribs. This is disastrous. And it took us a long time with him to get him going. But I think the quiet environment of Rob's, because Rob's place, there was only Chautauqua, My Little Pony, and my mare. So it was only just the 3 horses. But Rob's house was in Geelong. My house is in Melbourne Airport virtually. I'm up at Melbourne Airport. So the drive and the commute to and from for me became too much, to the point where I had to move the horse to increase his training, because I have a little girl as well, and I'm a mum. So we had to move him. So I found a property up at Romsey. But once I got him settled and calm and relaxed at Rob's, I then moved him to what is a beautiful property, gorgeous, amazing indoor arenas, big spaces, lovely. But it's a busy working stud. So I moved him then into an environment, because, you know, I had to move him somewhere. That all of a sudden was a different environment for him. So then I had that same issue again. You know, I've moved a quirky thoroughbred. He's now in a busier environment. For me to then go and ride him, there was always something happening. There was either a mare being served, or there were foals running past, or they had the tractors out. And look, they still do, but he's now been 12 months at the property as of a couple of days ago. He's at Eden Park Stud, and the girls up there do a wonderful job.
Love him, don't they?
But at the same time, it was, when I first took him there, it was hard because, you know, I had a quirky thoroughbred that with just about every noise and bang and shift, he was like, ah. So made it hard.
And what's interesting, what we know about gut bacteria is that, you know, the nature of racing is that they'll retire with a really challenged gut, so that, you know, they don't often get fed as much fiber, lots of grain, more transport, lots of competition. All those things mean they can retire from racing with this gut. So you have to actually rebalance it, and it takes time. And that's one of the things that's exciting chatting with you about, because you can reinforce to people that if you get it off the track, especially when they're showing some really clear signs, I mean, not all horses will even let you know what their gut's like. You've got to be patient. And I have to admit, I get a little bit frustrated sometimes when someone says, I've been, you know, using some of the Poseidon products, and, you know, it's been 2 months and my horse is still nervous. And it's like, but they've had years to create this poor gut. We have to be patient, and we'll chat more about, you know, what are the more consistent changes you're seeing in Sharky. But you think about, he'd been at Rob's and then he got moved and his gut's still not great. So perhaps there might have been a little bit of going backwards because the gut was stressed again. And we know gut bacteria determine behavior and appetite and performance and concentration, etc., etc. So I think it was probably around, it must have been just before he left Rob's, that we contacted you about your beautiful boy. And I remember when he was having the challenges in the barrier thinking, this is so much gut related, because you think about it, if their gut's in pain, the gut's over 30 meters long, if it's inflamed, then, you know, it's probably hard to be motivated to jump out and run. And he's a pretty stoic boy, but I was just really curious to see what would happen if we get in and start to change the gut. So it was very early in his transition that, you know, we got to meet Sharky, and so, you know, honoured that both you and Rob went, yeah, okay, we'll give this a go. And it's still very new. My dream is that Sharky and the journey you two have been on can inspire other people with their off the tracks. And, you know, that I love working with off the track horses, but I think they have so many challenges, and our previous way of dealing with them hasn't really addressed the importance of gut bacteria. You have to fix the gut first because it determines everything. So, you know, and Sharky, we don't know, and I know they did every test possible, but for me, I'm sure there was some gut stuff happening. He will take a while. And, you know, from my experience, I have been off the track that I've been kind of, you know, recording her transition, and she's got no obvious issues, but every now and then she'll have a bout of grazy heel, and it's like 18 months along, there's still some residual gut problems. It takes years. Doesn't mean you can't get some great wins along the way. So,
well, I remember, Linda, when you first came out, and you, as you say, you went to Rob's and you had the conversation with Rob, because at the end of the day, Rob was looking after Chautauqua at the time. I was just the rider. So I took care of all the riding side of things, and Rob was the ground handler for him. And Rob was also the feeder. Yes. And when he was down at Rob's, he was all over this whole feeding scenario. You know, he told me about your product. I never got to meet you that day.
That's right, yeah.
Rob was so excited about bringing you guys on board. And look, so was I. But to be honest, Linda, and this is me being honest, I was a little bit on the fence, because I didn't know what the gut bacteria was. I'd never heard of anything like this. All my life and all my career, I've always been just a rider. So I was on the fence. I was a little bit like, oh, maybe this stuff will work, but, you know, we'll see. So at Rob's place, he used to eat a really good diet. He was a really good eater for Rob's, but bearing in mind, Rob's place was a lot quieter than where he's at now. Yeah. So again, he always showed a relaxed nature at Rob's and all the rest of it. And then, as I said, I moved him, and he was still a good eater at the time, but I, at that point in time, used to keep him out in a big paddock overnight, because Rob and I really wanted to let this horse be a horse, because he'd had 9 years of being cooped up in stables, being an elite athlete. We just really wanted him to let down properly. And that's what we did. But something must have happened to him, and he's a very anxious thoroughbred. Something must have happened to him, and we'll never know because horses can't talk, but they can try and tell us.
Yeah.
And I can remember even ringing you and going, oh my God. So Chautauqua completely lost his mind. I don't know what happened. He pulled all the weight that I'd taken 6 to 7 months to put on.
Yeah.
He dropped in a week, like just gone through pure anxiety, pure stress. From me to ride him, he turned into almost a Looney Tunes, to the point that I'd come home in tears and go, what's happened to my horse? I can remember he stopped eating. So he was without your product and without your food for probably a total of 2 weeks where he stopped eating. And let me tell you, I can remember even saying it as clear as day, he blew his mind. I never thought I'd get him back. And it wasn't until we rejigged his diet, thanks to yourself and to the wonderful work that Rebecca Cartwright and High Gain, you two do a marvellous job with my horse and feeding him. And you girls have been on the money with me the whole way along, listening to my tears and cries for help with a very difficult thoroughbred. We got him back on track. But it wasn't until I saw, as a rider, the difficulty and the outcome of what came with him not eating and him not utilising your product, and the stir that he had with the ulcers and everything, because he went completely, I don't know what happened. I had a very difficult thoroughbred, and it took me probably every bit of a month after your product went back in to see results. And now that happened. Well, he's been at Eden Park now for 12 months. That happened probably about 8.5 months ago. And in the last 8.5 months, he hasn't missed a beat. And everyone saw when he came out to that show the other day of what 8.5 months of having the right diet, the right plan from yourself, from High Gain, getting the right things into him, the difference that it's made. So getting back to my point of, I was no longer sitting on the fence with your product. All of a sudden, I saw the benefit of what it did for my really, really difficult thoroughbred, who not only is probably one of the hardest horses to feed going around, because he won't eat oat and loose and chaff. You can't trick him. He's way too smart. You can't paste him. It's World War III and he rains down the war. It is a really, really hard thing to do with a horse that is almost as smart as any human. You know, it's like a little kid where you try and disguise a pea in something. They'll find it and they won't eat it. He's the same. So we had a lot of trouble getting him on track. So my view to anybody that's listening, that was me, that was sitting on the side of the fence going, oh, does this product work? Does it not? Guys, it really does, because the difference that I saw was absolutely huge. Like, all of a sudden now I've got a rideable, tractable thoroughbred who's happy, who's calmer, more relaxed. Look, he's calmer. He's certainly not bomb-proof, but compared to what I had, it's made a huge difference. And I'm now a believer, as you would have heard me turn around and say to you. And I
remember you ringing me, and you know, look, and I totally get where you're coming from, because I think as horse owners, there's so many new supplements that come on the market and this and that, but we are so passionate about gut health that it's like, not only was it about using our products, but as you said, we spoke about, you know, how to maximize the diet, the feeds that you're using from High Gain, management techniques, like how do you manage a sensitive horse from a gut perspective. And so, I mean, as you said, we'll never know what caused him to go backwards. Who knows? Sometimes it can be a lot of rain and all of a sudden a flush of sugars in the grass can be enough. Because I think about gut bacteria, it's almost like in my head, like a scale. And if the good bacteria are just outweighing the bad, you know, you're going to get some results. But it doesn't take much to shift it the other way and you'll get this backwards. So what we want to do with Sharky is over time is get those good guys to really significantly outweigh the bad ones. So then when he has a new stress response, he's still got so many good guys they're still in charge. And so, you know, there's 8 months of consistent diet, is in the same place, back on the EQ. Hopefully he'll just keep stepping up and stepping up. But he, you know, he's a 9-year-old and he's racing. That's a lot of years of having the challenges in the racing industry to create an unbalanced gut. So, you know, how do we expect him to suddenly recover that quickly? We don't. And, you know, your love for him and your patience for him is just what he needs.
Well, he's been a challenge, you know. Everything with this horse has been a challenge, and all equestrians will understand, and anyone that's got a thoroughbred will understand. But take your thoroughbred and probably times it by 5. I'm not saying I've got the worst, but you know, at the end of the day, my thoroughbred, everything that I try to do with him, from walking to paddock to feeding to floating, don't even go there.
Yeah.
Everything that I've had with this horse has been a brick wall. Like, I've had to work with him, and you cannot tell this horse, you cannot. The biggest mistake in the world would be to tell Chautauqua. Yeah. You know, you cannot tell him anything, because the thunder that he will bring is just, he'd rather kill himself or kill you in the process. So you've always got to ask him, and if you ask him, he'll go, yeah, all right, I'll give you a little bit and see, you know, because for the first 6 months, the horse was still wondering what card I was playing. He was wondering whether Rob and I were going to take him back to the races and racing, because he just didn't know. But now, I've now got a horse that after 16 months, he follows me around like a dog. Oh. He's got his head in my, he's got this fetish for hair. He's got his head in my hair, and he just, you know, absolutely just loves being in this space with me, which is divine, because even his owners group, when they first came out and saw him, like, they'd never been able to cuddle him in the racing stables. He was, you know, angry. He'd attack them from over the stable doors. He, you know, he just didn't love his life. Whereas now, you know, everyone sees the photos of him being a dill when he's out, or, you know, he's being difficult. and that's what makes Chautauqua Chautauqua. People love him because he is that. But at the same time, they also don't see what I see when I go home.
And you know what I love about that? I love that you can say they saw her as an angry horse. Again, the gut's inflamed and you're in pain. There's going to be anger, plus the good bacteria trigger the hormonal response. I mean, we know it in humans. The gut bacteria determine behavior. So the fact that he's allowing his true self to start to shine says to me his gut's improving. And it may take you 3 years till you go, you know what, Linda? I think I've got this consistent approach now. It doesn't matter what I throw at him. He can still respond. He's still a flight animal. We can't expect these horses to be totally submissive. We want them to still have their natural instinct, but let them make that choice. Be free to respond how they like, rather than responding in pain. And so, you know, when his gut's healthy, you can throw stresses at him and you won't see a change, except for that natural, oh, that's something new.
Well, I remember when you first said to me, you said, Casey, you've got to give it 12 months. You have to. You know, like you can't, as you said, you can't expect results in 2 months. Like, you've got to give it 12 months. And we're at the 12-month mark almost, you know, we're only a couple of months away. My horse is going great guns. He looks $1 million. He's working $1 million at home. So now is another challenge for me, where my homework is really, really good. Can't get it any better. I could compete him at home and he'd do beautifully because he knows his environment. But now the other challenge is, I've now got to take him out. That's his next role for a horse that's very anxious. And I remember, again, I rang you and spoke to you because I know that you've got your stress pace.
Yeah.
And I was utilising the stress pace when he got home from his competitions, because what I noticed about Sharky is when I take him out, he is very anxious, but B, goes to the toilet. He goes to the bathroom a lot. The other day when he was at the Show Hat Council event, he went to the toilet 9 times. He did 9 Ps through the day.
What about manure? Did the manure change at all?
It was very little bits of manure. So he was very obviously nervous, very uptight, very, where am I? Yeah. So he was just a nervous thing. So I gave him a stress paste before he left, because I'd spoken to you and said, golly gosh, you know, because at one point in time, the very first time I took him, I thought he was going to go get full-blown colic on me, because he'd do all these wheeze. And Linda Hayes was with me and she said to me, Casey, watch him for colic. You know, and I said, yeah, Linda, I'm watching him, because he just looked as though he was, and and as soon as I got home, as I said, I whacked a stress paste into him. And bearing in mind, putting a stress paste in my horse is World War III, so it's very, very hard to do. And thank God for the girls at Eden Park, because they're a little bit taller than me, so that when he absolutely just is, Hannah's the best.
Yeah.
When he's a real nerd or a real douchebag, Hannah can get the paste into him because she's up a little bit taller than me. Yeah. But I can remember saying before he went out to the show council, I'll hit him with that before he goes to see if we can relax him. And I had 2 stress pastes with me throughout the day in case I started to see those signs.
And we upped the EQ too, didn't we, leading up to that first show? Increase the EQ, because that will also help in anticipation of the stress event.
We doubled the dose leading into that day. And look, he wasn't colicky. He was really good, but he peed 9 times. But this is the other thing that I'm fighting now, because I thought, does he have a urinary tract infection? What is going on? But you've got to remember too, and I spoke to the vets the other week, because I took I think I told you, I took a urine and a blood out of him to go, what, because he is a grey. I'm thinking, what's going on with my horse? Is he got some sort of prostate issue? Is he, because he's 10 now?
Yeah.
And I didn't even think, but they said, as a racehorse, he might have been on Lasix his whole career. Who knows? I don't know what Hawkses did with him, but he might have, every time he went to the races, he might have been on the Lasix and knew before work he had to pee, after work he had to pee for bloods and drug testing, and he's always peeing. And even now, I'm going to go drive up after we finish this interview and go and ride him. As soon as I get off him and put him in the paddock, the first thing he'll do is go and wee. So for some reason, he relates work with going to the toilet. So I guess for me, the stress paste is going to be a very imperative tool, because if I'm not on top of that with a horse that is always weeing, is always peeing, is always pooing, I have a real high risk of getting a serious bout of colic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing I love about this whole gut thing. We're starting to get control back, because at least now you've got some solutions. And I had a great chat with the vet during the week who told me about a horse that was seriously ill, and between EQ and stress paste, she thinks it saved its life. And I said, what would happen if we didn't know about gut health? And she said, this horse wouldn't have made it. So knowing about gut, and you mentioned, the stress. It's like humans. Stress can be very invisible, and we think they're coping okay, but getting on a float, going to a new area, it's stress. So again, it'd be interesting to see whether as time goes on and his gut gets stronger, does he wee less? Does his manure stay a bit more normal? It's still, we still have to accept it's a new environment. He's still going to have to go to a new environment, and even a horse with a great gut is still allowed to go, oh, that's something unusual. What is that? Like, we can't expect him to be perfect. We don't want him to be perfect. But I think we now understand we've got some strategies in place. So it was great that we can chat regularly and have a strategy, because whether you like it or not, there are so many people watching, and I want them to watch for all the right reasons. You have so many people that are championing you and that want you to do well. And what I want is Sharky to be this hero. I don't like him being labelled a bad boy. Like, I think, he can actually show everybody else the challenges that off the tracks have, and the power of improving gut health, feeding correctly, management, and time, allowing time.
I think that's probably the most important thing, and that's one of and as frustrating as it is for me, Linda, like, I'd love to have him out competing now under saddle. Like, we're not far away, but I'd love to. But let's face it, I've got a thoroughbred who, if you think about it, and to anyone that's horsey that's watching, if you had a thoroughbred off the track that was as anxious and as high profile as mine is, and he goes to a show and he bucks and he kicks and he jumps off the ground, or he farts, or, whatever the circumstance is, everyone has that opportunity, and not many people are watching. For me, the world is watching, not just Australia, but the world is watching. Everybody watches.
A little bit of pressure.
So it's very, very hard. So the only thing that I can do with him is just be patient and allow that journey to happen. And there is no rushing it. He is going to be naughty. He's not a robot. He is going to be well behaved at times. Or there is the odd occasion where I'm probably going to have to leave the ring because he's going to go bonkers, but that's what off the trackers are. It's a journey. It's time, it's patience, and it's learning your horse. Like, I'm learning as I'm going. I've never dealt with a horse that when I've taken him to a competition's had 9 peas in a day and poos, and I've had to watch for colic before. But these are all of a sudden things that my off the tracker is doing. And look, it's been a real adventure with Poseidon, Equine and Digestive EQ, because even now my racing stable utilise it. Mark Kavanagh racing stable utilise it because of Chautauqua. Like, he really is an equine influencer, because people are seeing that, yes, there's life for a difficult thoroughbred if you've got the patience. Like, do I have the time? Probably not, but I've got all the patience in the world for this horse, because I've seen what he's like at home. I've seen the love and the care and the change in this animal, to know that this next 12 months for me is going to be a journey, as much of a journey as the last 12 months was, as I try and get him used to a show environment, as I try to have little kids pop balloons around him when he's very noise sensitive, all those sorts of things. But I think when he comes out the other side of 12 months' time and he learns that life's not that bad, I'm going to have a lovely horse at the end.
And both of you are role models. I think he's an influencer, but so are you, because you're sharing things right now that I would love every owner of an off the track to listen to, because thoroughbreds are incredible animals, but it's like humans. How can they be calm and trainable and athletic if they are in pain? And literally, from a science point of view, you shift the pH, which means the gut becomes more acidic or more alkaline. The gut bacteria changes. So it's about diet, it's about management, it's about managing stress. They cannot be the animals we want them to be if their gut is not healthy. So, whilst obviously our products have been amazing for you, you've mentioned having a great diet as well. And it's the management, making sure he's got plenty of fibre, getting him out in the paddock. It's all those little things that all contribute to creating this beautiful, amazing, athletic horse that, I feel so honoured to be part of the journey, because I remember very early on when he was at Rob's, and Rob and I had this conversation. I'm very respectful that people have a lot of experience, and Rob clearly had been around horses a lot. And you start talking about bacteria, and you can see their heads almost spinning around, like you're saying, what? Bacteria? And then, so when we started on the EQ, he rang me and he said, because at the time I think Sharky wasn't eating much of his hay, it was his hard feed. And so Rob rang me and said, Linda, should I be worried? All Sharky wants to do is eat his hay. And I'm like kind of cheering down the phone going, that to me tells me the fibre-loving bacteria, they're the good guys, they're the warriors, they're the ones that we want. We're now in charge. And they were saying to Sharky, eat me, because when you eat me, I create magic. And it was fairly quick. Within the first week, I think he started to change the way he was eating. And I remember Rob saying that he'd become more sooky. Well, again, take the pain away. You've got a horse that can be more affectionate. Plus, like in humans, gut sends the messages to the brain, and then the brain determines the hormones and the behaviour. It's gut first in everything. So we've got to get the gut right. And Sharky has obviously come to you for a reason, because you have allowed him. And, you're probably like me. They're a pet first, a show horse second. You can let him just transform and then inspire other pets. And perhaps there are other racehorses that are retiring. Everyone says that they have got no career because they are so anxious, they are so stressed, they're so difficult. But I look at Shaq and go, hang on a minute. If he can do it, I can do it. And then, following your journey. So it'd be great to revisit in 6 months' time and say, okay, let's talk about him now. When you've been to the show, what were his poos like?
Well, that's all got stuff to do with him. And it is about knowing and understanding your horse. Like, this guy is also very hard to read, because at the end of the day, he's a champion. And my point with this is champions are champions for a reason. Champions push through pain.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are times where, I've got to know my horse, because Sharky will do, if I'm riding him, he'll give me everything he's got. And I have to understand and feel him now when I know that he's either getting tired. There was one day there where he you know, because he is a difficult eater, he wasn't getting any electrolytes into him. And I, you know, as much as I try, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
And there was one day there that I just felt he's not quite right. And I got off him and he nearly passed out. And he'd only done 15, 20 minutes worth of work. He'd done next to nothing. He didn't even have a sweat on him. He got really wobbly and I thought, oh my God, what's gonna but you know, this is the problem that I face with this horse is a champion pushes through pain. And with this bloke, he will literally push through pain. So I've almost got to be so in sync with him because he will never tell me that enough's enough. If I ask him, he'll go.
No, it's a good reminder, Casey, because what we do know, by the time they're showing you the symptoms, they've had the pain for some time because they don't want to show it. They are an animal that's a prey animal. They don't want to show their weaknesses. And then you have someone like Sharky who's got that extra level of champion in him that he's like, I am not going to show you. That's why I remember we talked about, I don't want to, you know, hone on his racing challenges, that last barrier when I think everyone was watching him. And he was just like, I'm not coming out, you know, like I'm not. And I'm, you know, I've got this, I'm not moving. And it was like, that's a horse that is just he'd had enough. And
it's interesting because all natural ability of a horse, all a horse is wired for is a flight animal. They're a pack animal. When one goes, they all go. Yeah. And you've got to think so many times he knows his job. He's a horse that's won $9 million on the track, like and being world champion, not just in Australia.
Do you think you'll make that much money in showing? Do you think he'll win $9 million in showing money? We don't
know what my other half says? Oh my God, my other half says, and how much money are you spending for a $20 ribbon? And I'm like, don't ask.
It's the journey.
It's the journey that you take. It's all for just the horse. People, non-horsey people don't understand, but we'll give Heath, my man, that one. But it's just, you know, you've got a horse here that actually goes against natural instinct. This is how strong my horse is of mind. He will go against all natural instincts and say no. When, you know, like, and this is what makes my journey even more difficult is, you know, it doesn't matter if I pull out a stock whip and lace him, like I've never done that. Please don't say that I have. But it wouldn't matter even if I did. If I pulled a stock whip out and laced him, he'd just stand there. He'd go, you can hit me until the cows come home, but I'm not doing it. You know, like whereas if I ask him, tell him, give him his time, and again it comes back to patience. He'll try and do it for me. It won't be perfect, but he'll try, you know, like he's just one of those things. But again, you know, the importance of a product like yours is to try and really balance them out and give it. Is it a cure? Well, it's probably never going to be a cure for ulcers, because if I was going to try and cure him for ulcers, he'd probably need needles, he'd need ulcer shield, he'd need just about every treatment ulcer, you know, that you can find. But for me, again, he's difficult to paste. So for me to paste him every day, I'm going to end up with a sour, angry, really hard horse to work with. So what have I done? I find the latter. I found something that will
keep preventative, isn't it? I think that's, you know, just on that it's really interesting. We talk about gastric ulcer treatment, and I keep saying the gut's 30 meters long, the stomach's one small part. So whilst, you know, obviously if a horse has got stomach ulcers, particularly the top part of the stomach, we use gastric ulcer treatment, but it won't help the gut bacteria. You know, in fact, I think long-term use could make it worse. So what we've done with Sharky is we know we need to treat the whole gut, but it, you know, as you've been, it's not just been about products, it's been about this whole
journey.
Casey, we could talk forever. Just to finish, can I ask you, if someone said to you, if you could sum up how Poseidon Equine, or what role they've played in this journey, how would you describe? I mean, you've touched on some of the things, but could you just summarize really succinctly about all the things that we've done, I guess, along the way?
For me, you guys have been an absolute level of support and encouragement, from losing Rob to a heart attack, and that feeling of I'm on my own with this horse, what am I going to do? From the moments where I've had, you know, my absolute lowest points, where I touched base on earlier, where Chautauqua completely and utterly blew his mind, to the point that I didn't even know whether I could continue him on a show horse journey. You guys have always been a firm support and encouragement of saying, trust the product, not let the product work.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. And as I've said, now that I've got about 8 months of consistency in his diet, thanks to you guys, and again, reiterating you and Highgain working collaborative as a team with Chautauqua,
yeah.
I have now got a horse that is willing to give me whatever I ask. Yes, it's going to be difficult, and yes, we've got a long learning journey to go. There are going to be more photos with probably him with all 4 feet off the ground, but I think that Poseidon Equine, you guys have just been a ledger of support, and to let me know that with a thoroughbred like him, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and to stick on the path and to continue that journey, and the results will come. And I think that's what this brand has done for me. It's funny. Given me a horse that, you know, now I've got that nature, that, you know, that cuddly, affectionate thoroughbred that everybody doesn't see. Like, I see that every day when I go and, you know, give him his carrots and give him a scratch. Like, yeah. All he wants to do is have a cuddle and a kiss. And whoever would have thought that through his racing days, Chautauqua would ever turn around and give cuddles and kisses. It just wasn't who he was.
He's a beautiful, beautiful boy. And we feel very, very grateful, I said, that you trusted us, because I said, you know, going back then, we're still a very new company. And one of the things we've worked really hard at is raising awareness of horse gut health and how important it is. And for anybody watching or listening, to understand that we aren't just about shoving a product. We want to make sure, or, you know, everything is ticked. Making sure the diet's balanced, management practices are in there. I mean, I'm a horse owner myself. That's why Poseidon Equine actually started, because I thought, it's just keep on putting band-aids isn't the solution. We've got to get to the foundation.
Well, again, I wouldn't endorse the product with a horse like Chautauqua, with the entire world watching me.
Yeah.
Unless the product was actually doing something for me and for my horse. And as you've heard, my journey has been a good one, from the point where I went, oh, here's another product, is it going to work? You know, like, and it was Rob. As I said, Rob introduced the product. Rob got the product going. He said yes, because that's what he used to do. Rob used to feed him. And I was like, really? Is this going to work? But the proof is in the pudding. The proof.
Do you remember those early conversations? I think you were thinking, "Oh, just be nice." I know you're always very respectful to us, but probably one of the best things that could have happened, even though it was scary for you, was for him to stop using it, so you could see if we don't put in the gut, they go backwards. So
100%.
So look, thank you so much. I can't wait. I think now the borders are closed again at the moment, but I am coming down soon to see that beautiful boy and give him a cuddle, and just, you know, we're very, very excited to see him transition, for both you and Rob, because we know Rob is still walking every step of the way with both of you. I'm sure he's whispering in his ear. It might have been him saying when you're at the last show, hey, come on, mate, just, you know, show off a little bit, just one leap in the air for me, please. Well, you know, he's got it. Well, let's hope he never loses, you know, that exuberance, Chautauqua. He's got to be a horse you want to watch and keep going, what's going to happen next. But
someone said to me, I've got to embrace his sharkiness, and that's exactly what it is. We have to embrace his sharkiness. And at the end of the day, no one's ever going to change him. So we are what we're going to be, and his sharkiness is just that. That's, you know, it's the horse that I've got.
That's what we want. We want him performing with that joy and that zest and that excitement, because that's him, not from pain. And that's where you're doing such a great job. So thank you so much for sharing all your stories. I could talk about Sharky forever. He needs his own Instagram page.
Well, I've been keeping a hold off on that. So for everybody that's watching, I've been waiting for that. And I'm getting a lot of people saying, can we please get something going? But the reason I haven't, because with the lockdowns and him not being out and competing yet, all I'm going to be posting is pretty much photos of him in a paddock. There's no real destination. But now that he's about to start to embark on his showing career, and there'll be places where I can say Chautauqua's going to go here, so people can see him if he's in the local area, I will get that up and running when he starts to come out, because at the end of the day, I don't want to flood the market with Chautauqua this, Chautauqua that, because people will get sick of him. And at the moment, people are wanting more.
I don't think they will. They love him.
At the same time, you know, racing folk love him because he was brilliant. There's never a horse that's, even, you know, the mighty mare Black Caviar, she did things from the front, but the turn of foot that my horse showed, and The ground that he pulled off of Group 1 horses to win the races that he did had racing people in awe of him. But then I've also got the people on the other side of the fence, the people that don't like racing, that love horses but just hate racing. And they love my horse because my horse told racing to get stuffed, you know. So I've got people from both sides of the fence. But now I still have everyone still love him because everyone's like, you would never get rid of that personality. That personality is who he is. So when I get my Instagram and Facebook pages up and running for him, it will happen, but I'm not doing it at the moment because I don't want to be posting about lockdowns and somewhere. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. We're not doing anything. But once we're out and competing and we've all of a sudden got things happening and goals moving and we're moving towards things and there's actually an interest in what he's doing, that's when I'll get it going.
Well, we'll be following that for sure. Thanks, Casey. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thanks for being my sponsor. Love the product.
Our pleasure.